We stutter. Boy thanks Joe Biden for help in emotional DNC speech. Watch. 13-year-old Braden Harrington stole the show at the final night of the Democratic National Convention on Thursday with a moving speech about how fellow stutterer Joe Biden helped him find his confidence. Leave a comment. Politicians and celebrities lined up to endorse Joe Biden in a series of speeches during the Democratic National Convention on Thursday, but a 13-year-old boy with a stutter may have upstaged them all. Braden Harrington, a self-described regular kid with a stutter, thanked Joe Biden for helping him fight through that challenge, in an emotional speech delivered from the boy's home to millions of people Thursday night. The boy's moving 2-minute address has since exploded on the internet, where people have applauded him for his bravery on such a massive stage. Biden accepts Democratic nomination for president at convention's final night. During his Thursday speech on the fourth day of the Democratic National Convention, Joe Biden formally accepted the party's presidential nomination in the race for the White House against Donald Trump. "If you entrust me with the presidency, I will draw on the best of us, not the worst," said Biden when speaking on his vision as president. Joe Biden vowed to unite an America torn by crisis and contempt Thursday night, accepting the Democratic presidential nomination and achieving a pinnacle in an unfinished quest that has spanned 3 decades and been marred by personal tragedy, political stumbles and more dynamic rivals. The past hurdles fell away as Biden addressed his fellow Democrats and millions of Americans at home who he hopes will send him to the White House to replace Donald Trump, though his triumphant moment was drained of immediate drama by the coronavirus pandemic, which left him speaking to a nearly empty arena rather than to a joyously cheering crowd. He spoke about how he met Biden, who is a fellow stutterer, at a rally in February, and about how the former vice president coached him with his own speaking impediment. "He told me that we were members of the same club, we stutter," the boy said, pressing through the verbal speed bump with confidence. Harrington said it meant a lot to know that Biden had become vice president despite his stutter. "He told me about a book of poems by W.B. Yeats he'd read out loud to practice," Harrington said. "He showed me how he marks his address to make them easier to say out loud, so I did the same thing today." Harrington paused his speech to show off the paper on which it was written. The typed-out speech featured plenty of space between lines, lots of color coding and several bold-faced words. The boy went on to describe how many of the normal things in his life, such as going to the movies, have been put on hold until the world feels better, in a nod to the coronavirus pandemic. "We need the world to feel better," he said. "I'm just a regular kid, and in a short amount of time, Joe Biden made me feel confident about something that's bothered me my whole life. Joe Biden cared. Imagine what he could do for all of us." Harrington wrapped up the speech by urging adults to elect Biden on November 3rd. "Kids like me are counting on you to elect someone who we can all look up to, someone who cares, someone who will make our country and the world feel better." His brief address, briefly interrupted now and then by a stutter, has already racked up more than 4.6 million views on Twitter. More people tuned in to watch Harrington than they did to hear the Chicks sing the Star-Spangled Banner, or to hear John Legend and Common pay tribute to the late John Lewis. Singer Cyndi Lauper described the boy as an inspiration, while Brooklyn Nine-Nine actress Melissa Fumero tweeted, "Bravo, Braden. Speaking is hard for me too, Braden," wrote former Arizona Representative Gabby Giffords, who had to relearn how to speak after she was shot in the head in 2011. "But as you know, practice and purpose help. Thank you for your courage and for the great speech." Many contrasted the Biden story with Trump, who infamously mocked a reporter with a disability on the campaign trail in 2015. Trump mimicked the reporter's hand posture, shook around and affected a shaky tone while pretending to quote him. Come together, Biden kicks off battle with Trump for U.S. presidency, calls for unity. "Here and now I give you my word, if you entrust me with the presidency, I will draw on the best of us not the worst," Biden declared. "I'll be an ally of the light, not our darkness. And make no mistake, united we can and will overcome this season of darkness in America." The pandemic has shaken the nation and fundamentally altered the campaign. But Biden pointed to the public health emergency and the severe economic fallout to turn traits previously seen as vulnerabilities, notably a long career spent in elected office, into an advantage by presenting himself as a competent leader in a moment that Democrats say cries out for one in the White House. Cory Booker recalls late grandfather in DNC's speech calling for minimum wage hike. The night's keynote address was the speech of a lifetime for Biden, who at 77 would be the oldest president ever elected if he defeats Trump in November. But his convention leaned on a younger generation earlier in the night to help energize his sprawling coalition. Tammy Duckworth, An Illinois senator who lost both legs in Iraq and is raising two young children, said Biden has common decency. Ori Booker, only the ninth African-American senator in U.S. history, said Biden believes in the dignity of all working Americans. And Pete Buttigieg, a 38-year-old openly gay military veteran from Indiana, noted that Biden came out in favor of same-sex marriage as vice president even before President Barack Obama did. Joe Biden is right, this is a contest for the soul of the nation. And to me that contest is not between good Americans and evil Americans, Buttigieg said. It's the struggle to call out what is good for every American. Above all, Biden was focusing on uniting the nation as Americans grapple with the long and fearful health crisis, the related economic devastation, a national awakening on racial justice, and Trump, who stirs heated emotions from all sides. Biden's positive focus Thursday night marked a break from the dire warnings offered by former President Obama and others the night before. The 44th President of the United States warned that American democracy itself could falter if Trump is re-elected, while Biden's running mate, Kamala Harris, the 55-year-old California senator and the daughter of Jamaican and Indian immigrants, addressed race problems in a way Biden could not. Throughout their convention, the Democrats have summoned a collective urgency about the dangers of Trump as president. In 2016, they dismissed and sometimes trivialized him. In the days leading up to Biden's acceptance speech, they cast him as an existential threat to the country. Beyond Biden's highly anticipated speech, Thursday's program was designed to highlight the diversity of the Democratic Party and the nation he hopes to lead. We know how important it is that we elect real leaders like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, people of honor and integrity, who hold justice close to their hearts and believe that the lives of my 4 black children matter, Lance Bottoms said. She spoke ahead of a tribute to the late John Lewis, the Georgia congressman and civil rights leader who devoted much of his life to ensuring African Americans are able to vote. Biden's Democratic Party has sought this week to put forward a cohesive vision of values and policy priorities, highlighting efforts to combat climate change, tighten gun laws and embrace a humane immigration policy. They have drawn a sharp contrast with Trump's policies and personality, portraying him as cruel, self-centered and woefully unprepared to manage virtually any of the nation's mounting crises and policy challenges. Voting was a prime focus of the convention on Thursday as it has been all week. Democrats fear that the pandemic, and the Trump administration, may make it difficult for voters to cast ballots in person or by mail. Biden's call for unity comes as some strategists worry that Democrats cannot retake the White House simply by tearing Trump down. Biden needs to give his sprawling coalition something to vote for. That's easier said than done in a modern Democratic Party made up of disparate factions that span generation, race and ideology. Though he has been in the public spotlight for decades, much of the electorate knows little about Biden's background before he began serving as President Barack Obama's vice president in 2008. Thursday's convention served as a national reintroduction of sorts that drew on some of the most painful moments of his life. I know how mean and cruel and unfair life can be sometimes, Biden said. He added, I found the best way through pain and loss and grief is to find purpose. As a schoolboy, Biden was mocked by classmates and a nun for a severe stutter. He became a widower at just 30 after losing his wife and infant daughter to a car accident. And just 5 years ago, he buried his eldest son who was stricken by cancer. From such hardship, Biden developed a deep sense of empathy that has defined much of his political career. And throughout the convention, Biden's allies testified that such empathy, backed by decades of governing experience, makes him the perfect candidate to guide the nation back from mounting health and economic crises. His allies Thursday included Braden Harrington, a 13-year-old boy from Concord, New Hampshire, who talked about the bond he shares with Biden over stuttering. The boy said he and Biden were members of the same club, each with a stutter they're working to overcome. He noted that Biden told him about a book of poems he liked to read aloud to practice his speech and showed the boy how he marks his speeches so they're easier to read aloud. I'm just a regular kid, and in a short amount of time, Joe Biden made me more confident about a thing that's bothered me my whole life, Harrington said. The pandemic forced Biden's team to abandon the typical convention pageantry and rely instead on a highly produced, all-virtual affair that has failed to draw the same television ratings as past conventions. The silence was noticeable Thursday night as Biden took the stage to make history in a cavernous hall in downtown Wilmington. His audience consisted of a few dozen reporters and photographers. It's Trump's turn next. The Republican president, who abandoned plans to host his convention in North Carolina and in Florida, is expected to break tradition and accept his nomination from the White House lawn next week. In the meantime, he's seeking to take attention from Biden. Trump was continuing this week's swing state tour on Thursday with a stop near Biden's birthplace of Scranton, Pennsylvania. While he is trying to stay on offense, the president has faced a series distractions of his own this week, many of his own making. Trump on Wednesday praised a conspiracy theory group that believes the president's political opponents support Satanism and pedophilia. On Thursday, a federal judge ruled that prosecutors could access his long-hidden tax returns. Also Thursday, New York prosecutors announced the indictment of Steve Bannon, Trump's former campaign manager and White House chief counsel, who was charged with fraud. Wednesday night, Harris, a 55-year-old California senator and the daughter of Jamaican and Indian immigrants, addressed race and equality in a personal way Biden cannot when he formally accepts his party's presidential nomination. There is no vaccine for racism. We have got to do the work, Harris declared. Beyond the carefully scripted confines of the virtual convention, there have been modest signs of tension between the moderate and progressive wings of Biden's Democratic Party.